Hello everybody, hope you're having a great time wherever you are. Now, welcome to Quina Show, and today I want to talk about MimbleWimble, Grin and Beam. Now, what I will talk about, why is it everyone so excited about these three topics? What are problems it's trying to meant to solve? How does it solve those problems? And lastly, what are the implications to you? Now, why all this excitement is because a lot of people think MimbleWimble, Grin and Beam are like Bitcoin 2.0. So first of all, what is MimbleWimble? MimbleWimble is basically the spell, right, that Voldemort in the Harry Potter show used to tongue-tie their victims. Basically, if they put a MimbleWimble spell on the victim cannot, say anything. So basically, that's the key. And MimbleWimble is actually the foundational layer of the technology upon which Grin and Beam, the two coins, are being built. Think of MimbleWimble like the father, and the two babies are Grin and Beam. Yeah. And why are they called Bitcoin 2.0? Because of the mysterious birth of this technology as well. So just like Bitcoin, right, is created by the still anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto, MimbleWimble is created by someone called Tom Elvis Jeduso, which is the French name of the evil Harry Potter character Voldemort, right? So in 2016, this anonymous person, who today still remains a mystery who he is, actually sent a link to a PDF to the Bitcoin Developer Forum and asking them to check out this white paper of MimbleWimble, which says that this is an attempt to actually significantly improve Bitcoin scalability and privacy issues. So that's the key, right? Now, and Green, the other thing is about this. So why is it called Bitcoin 2.0? It's also very similar to Bitcoin's governance model, which is not a not for profit model, and it is free of ICO. So there's no company behind Green and MimbleWimble. So they do not raise any initial fundings. There's no pre-mine. There's no founders reward as well. And Green itself is 100% funded by communities' donations. So the developers are also working part-time on it. Now, because of that, some people think that it doesn't move fast enough, the project, and that's why Beam was then created. So it's the same principles, same technology, and using MimbleWimble, but the the governance model is different because Beam is for profit, right? And basically there is a group of people behind the project, and they will get a reward for the initial coins mined. Yeah. So now let's look at their website. So this is Green's website, right? On first look, you will see it's very clean cut, and also there's a fun element to it. So in a way, if you don't know, it seems like, you can't really take it seriously, but actually, this is more, I guess, to represent the spirit of the developer and the voluntary kind of spirits, right? Hence, it is a bit of clean cut, right? And more basic, no frill kind of feeling, right? And what's Green? So basically, it is electronic transactions for all without censorship or restrictions. Green empowers anyone to transact or save modern money without the fear of external control or oppression. Green is designed for the decades to come, not just tomorrow. Green wants to be usable by everyone, regardless of borders, culture, skills, or access. Now, the key about Green and Beam is really its privacy nature. The thing is, they said they have no amount, so that you cannot see the transaction amounts, and there's no addresses. You don't know who is the sender address, you don't know who is the recipient address, and that's why it is so private and anonymous. Transactions can be trivially aggregated to hide where a newly created transaction comes from. It gets relayed privately among peers before it is publicly announced. Later on, I'm going to explain how does this work, right? But just bear for me for now. Scalable. MimbleWimble leverages cryptography to allow most of the past transactions data to be removed. This guarantees Green won't collapse under its own weight in the long term. So scalability is something that they're trying to counter the Bitcoin problem now, although Lightning Network is trying to resolve the Bitcoin scalability issues, but Green seems to be able to resolve both the privacy and scalability issue in one coin. Yeah. And open, because Green is developed openly by developers distributed all over the world. is not controlled by any company, foundation, or individual. The coin distribution is designed to be as fair as is known to be possible, and that is key, right? So it is purely driven by the community, yeah, and 100% donation funded, yeah. If you look at the Beam website, you will see that they call themselves Scalable Confidential Cryptocurrency. And you will actually it is very similar in principles, right? So but the thing is, you will see that the feeling is very different. Like Beam website is much more polished, right? It's much more professional. It has more expensive look and feel to it. Yeah. So now I want to talk about then how does Grin and Beam, right, resolve the 4 problems inherent in most of other coins today, right? So first up, the very important thing about Grin and Beam is that it's private by nature, yeah, by default. So first let's step back and say what are the problems inherent in other coins, right? Because Bitcoin for one, right, it is definitely the number 1 coin, the most well-known coin, right? But the thing is that because you can still see a lot of the recipient and the sender at public addresses, and the government is basically saying that they are able to track actually who are doing the transactions if they really want to track. And there are a lot of companies who have done analysis, cross-chain analysis, and they're able to actually find out who are the people behind the transactions if they really wanted to. So that's why there is a concern among people who are really, really, privacy-centric to say that Bitcoin is actually not fully private. The other thing about scalability is, of course, as you know, that Bitcoin transactions per second is only 7 transactions per second. So it is still pretty slow compared to many other coins, and of course compared to Visa and Master, right? Now, the thing is that there are work in place, which is like Lightning Network, which is trying to resolve this problem, but still, right, it still is another layer on top of it, and it will take, probably next year or the year after before it can be fully realized. The third issue is decentralization. Although a lot of people are mining Bitcoin, there is still that concern that because not everyone, is still not yet mainstream, so not everyone is into this holding Bitcoin yet. The top addresses now is still concentrated in a handful number of individuals or wallet addresses. So that's why there is still a centralized issue to date, based on if you look at the addresses and the holdings of Bitcoins, among the addresses. So to resolve this, you really need time and just more and more people getting into Bitcoin. Then this problem will be resolved. But for now, there is still the issue. And lastly, price volatility, because Bitcoin and other major cryptocurrencies are seen to be such a it is, so for the people who support it, it is definitely something that they want to hold on, and so they don't want to sell, they don't want to spend it. And of course, it can be both up and down when there's bad news, right? There's any negative news, it's very sensitive. So then it is very, it moves up and down super fast, right? And that's why it is very volatile in that sense. And this is how Grin and Beam resolve that problem. Let's look at the first one, privacy, right? So how does it solve the problems? Exactly how? So let's first look at the privacy issue. So the thing is this. So if you look at this chart, right, -5 is basically the amount being sent, yeah, by the sender. And this big number, they call it a blinding factor. It's basically something chosen by the sender. And the key one is their private key, is the sender's private key. And then the big number 2 is again a blinding factor chosen by the sender. So each transaction in the MimbleWimble network will have this set of, they call it Pedersen commitments, which is basic. Don't know why that's the name, but definitely just know that Pedersen commitments is it has the sender amount, it has a blinding factor called just any random number that is chosen by the sender, private key one, which is the sender's private key, and a big number. But this all now is broken down into this number, so you can see. But actually, when you have a number like that, right, and when you have the resulting number, which is again a huge number, you cannot go back and see what is the what are the numbers that made up it. That means, right, you only as a sender know that you're actually sending $5 and the big number that you will choose, and the sender also know their key. But for anyone onlooker who look at the blockchain, they will only see the resulting number, right? So which is a huge number, which you cannot like work backwards to see what was the four numbers that made up that huge number. Similarly, then each transaction will have also the outcome, that means the output, which means $5 received by the recipient, that big number, which again is chosen by the sender. Key 2 is basically the private key of the recipient, and the big number is the, again, number chosen by the sender. So all these numbers are going to be huge numbers. You cannot work backwards to see what are the transaction amount. You cannot see what is the private keys. And that's why they say it is private in the sense that you cannot see the addresses. That's what it means. You cannot see the transaction amount, but the people who send and the people who receive, they will know those numbers. So someone looking at a blockchain cannot see what is the resulting amount because, you know, is the result of all these big numbers. Yeah, you cannot work backwards. Only those people who are actually doing the transactions, they know. So that is so powerful, and that's why it is so private. Yeah. And now if you just rearrange the numbers, right, it's the same thing, but basically you rearrange it. For someone to check the validity now, it's just that they need to see that -5 plus 5, they just need to check that the amount sent and the amount received are correct. So if it goes down to 0, then basically they cannot see it, right? Then it's great. Then basically they cannot, then this is basically, as long as the amount sent is equal to amount received, then they know that it is valid. Yeah. And that's what it just means, right? Then this one basically then collapses to very small numbers. And again, only when the recipient need to get the amount, they just need to, you know, divide this number by their key, and then they can prove that they are the valid recipient of this amount. So that's actually how it works. Yeah. And yeah, and that's why, because you actually have, you know, so for someone onlooking, as long as they know that, okay, the receive amount and the send amount is the same, then that's great. And the other issue is that if the person sending it can prove that they know what is the key, and then that is enough, right, to say that it is correct and it is fine. Yeah. Now, next issue is how do they resolve the scalability issue? So they use another technology or another concept that basically called coin join. It's basically they group and then combine a lot of transactions, a lot of input output into one block, right? And then they basically just mumble jumble them, right? And basically at the end of the day is, as long as the result is 0, that means the input is equal to the output, then everyone just need to know that the transactions are correct. Think of it like this. If Alice were to send $5 to Bob, and then Bob sends all the $5 to Carol, right? So in the end, you don't need to know anything what Bob does, right? You only need to know, okay, Alice sent $5, and then now Carol get $5. That's all you need to know, right? So basically, all the intermediate transactions, as long as they spend everything, those transactions can be removed from the chain, from the block. And that's why it is much lighter, it is much smaller chains, and that's why it will only have those blocks of transactions of the people that haven't spent their coins. That means either they spend partially or they spend, you know, 0% of the amount that they receive. Those transactions will still remain on the blockchain. But if like the example just now, if Bob spent everything, then that Bob's transactions will be removed from the blockchain, and that's why it can scale, and that's why it is, you know, it can be processed much faster than Bitcoin. Yeah. So next is the issue of decentralization and price volatility. For this, we need to actually look at green supply. Now, green supply is infinite. It means that unlike Bitcoin, right, which will be basically, you know, only there's only 21 million units of Bitcoin, right, and it will be stopped mining by year 2140. But for green, forever there will be a production, but the growth of production will be basically slow. You look at the blue line in this chart, that's what basically it means. But you know, as the outer year go more and more, the growth will be still happening, but at a very slow rate, right, that you hardly notice, basically very close to 0% growth in the outer years. But for now, every second one green will be mined, and so one block is 1 minute. That means 60 units of green will be mined in that one block. Yeah. So yeah, so that's why, because of that, and they expect that because there will be infinite supply of green, they expect people to actually use this currency. They expect it to be a medium of exchange more and more, rather than you hold on to the coin, or like Bitcoin now, because of its limited supply, is capped in supply. People think that definitely it will have a lot of value, so people rather hold it as a long term, for value, rather than spend it. So that's the issue, right? At least the majority think that way. So that's why yeah, that's why it's very hard to be used as a medium of exchange. That's why green is hoping to counter that by changing their supply to be infinite. Yeah. And of course, they hope that with that also, that the price volatility will not be so much. Because if you always have that production, and then basically if it comes in production and then people will spend it into the circulation, then basically they think that the volatility will be very low. That means it will be basically holding in value. That means the value will be quite stable. It's basically they expect with this kind of production schedule. But then again, right, if a lot of people think that green is like the Bitcoin 2.0, that they might still hoard it, and they're hoping that for future price gain, just like Bitcoin early days. I mean, and that brings me actually to the last point about what is the implication to you, right? So a lot of people are already actually, going crazy. I can say that term, going crazy over this new invention, right? Because after all, 2016, it already known that there's this technology, and in 2019, right, January 15th, just a few days ago, that green was officially launched, right? And but before that, the CoinDesk already ran an article, and they interviewed a lot of venture capitals, and they already said, right, by our conservative estimates, $100 million of mostly venture capital money already invested into special purpose investment vehicles to mine green. This does a lot of weird things. It turns a bunch of people who would have been buyers of green into sellers of it, changes the composition of the early holder roster, and it means the chain will launch with an extremely high degree of security via high proof of work hash rate. So definitely for this is also there are two ways to get green, right? One is you can mine it, and the good thing is, because they want to encourage as many people as possible to own this coin, and that's why it solves the decentralized problem. They allow people basically to just use your graphic your GPU, which is your access computer, on your own computer to mine green. Yeah, profitability is questionable, because more and more people mine, then difficulty will be harder generally. But the thing is that a lot of VC money, a lot of the rich people already invested into mining this, as you can see here, right? um so yeah, so the thing is, because there was so much hype around this, but at the same time, it is still very early days for this project, right? And you can see the price literally just crashed from opening of 540 to now it's about 234. So more than half of it down, right? It's almost like, yeah. So basically, yeah, it's a lot of hype, and it remains to be seen how much it will be delivered, right? And the thing is, having said all that, the scalability also, the transactions per second, it is, I heard from the developer of green, it was only about 10 to 20 transactions per second. So yes, it's definitely faster than Bitcoin, but it is still not like super fast, right? Not like Ripple or other coins, right, that claims they can do thousands transactions per second. So yeah, so that remains to be seen what happens. And of course, also see what is the actual demand for this coin, because ultimately you need people to actually use and demand this coin, right? After all, Bitcoin took 10 years as well to really get to this stage, right? Yeah, so it is interesting. But definitely, if you want to get green, you can either mine, or you can buy it from some exchanges, right? And here you can see, you can go to coingecko.com, and the major exchanges is probably Bitforex only. Not many. So like it's still not offered, still not listed in major reputable exchanges like Binance, Coinbase, still not yet. So yeah, maybe you want to wait for it to be listed on those more really reputable exchange before getting yourself some. But meanwhile, right, I think it's going to be a while before it actually, yeah, it might have room to drop further, right? So that's the thing. But definitely, it's quite interesting to know that there's another new invention. Is very similar. I mean, Grin especially is very similar to the spirit of Bitcoin in its early days. So it is very interesting to see what happens, right? Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. And I hope this is beneficial to you. And yeah, if you like this, please share this with other people and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.